1982. Lonnie Johnson, a nuclear engineer on NASA's Galileo mission to Jupiter, is testing a heat pump in his bathroom sink when a jet of water rips across the room. The most important toy of the 1990s just hit a wall, and the company that would sell $1 billion of it was going to make him fight for his share. You have held his work. If you grew up in the United States in the 90s, you held it with both hands. Bright plastic, a pressurized tank, a trigger that could soak someone across an entire backyard. The Super Soaker. And the man who designed it was at the same time designing the power systems that let NASA send spacecraft to places the sun barely reaches. He drew both of those things. He almost lost both of those names. What you are about to learn is in the United States Patent Office under a single number, Beat Spacecraft Callback Flash, and it is also on the public record of an arbitration with one of the largest toy companies on Earth. The man who designed the spacecraft power source for Jupiter ended up walking in front of an arbitrator to be paid for his own toy. The figure that arbitrator awarded him is on the public record. We'll get to it. Johnson did not stumble into NASA. The kid who built a junkyard robot that won a regional engineering fair in 1968 went to Tuskegee for nuclear engineering, into the Air Force, and then to the place that builds America's deep space machines, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. JPL was building Galileo. Galileo would fly past Venus, past the asteroid belt, and orbit Jupiter, 750 million miles from the Sun. At that distance, solar panels are useless. The spacecraft had to carry its own power source. The answer was a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, an RTG. Inside the RTG, a brick of plutonium-238 stays warm for decades, and that heat is converted directly into electricity. Power with no moving parts, running for decades on heat alone, the same instinct he would chase years later in his own lab. Johnson worked on the power systems engineering for Galileo. The mission launched in 1989, reached Jupiter in 1995, and orbited the planet for almost 8 years, returning the closest data we have ever had on Jupiter's moons. The same family of power systems would later carry Cassini to Saturn, 2 of the most important deep space missions of the 20th century. And the man working on the engineering that kept them alive went home at night to his own private experiments. One of them was a refrigeration cycle that used water instead of freon. He was trying to invent a cleaner heat pump. The bathroom became his test bench. He clamped a homemade nozzle to a length of rubber tubing, taped the tubing to the bathroom sink faucet, opened the tap, and a tight, high-pressure jet of water ripped across the room and slammed into the opposite tile. The heat pump did not work. The water gun did. He looked at the dripping wall and said, out loud, that this would make a great toy. The year was 1982. He drew it up. He filed for a patent for a high-performance pressurized water gun, granted in 1986. And then he tried to sell it. Toy company after toy company turned him down. Some wouldn't take the meeting. Some took the meeting and passed. 7 years went by. Galileo was being integrated for launch. The toy sat in a drawer. Then in 1989, a small Philadelphia company called Larami Corporation said yes. The president of Larami watched Johnson stand in his office and fire the prototype across the room. Larami licensed the design. They launched it in 1990 as the Power Drencher and rebranded it in 1991 as the Super Soaker. By the end of that year, it was the best-selling toy in the United States. The Super Soaker line grew, bigger tanks, longer ranges, the Super Soaker 50, the CPS series. In 1995, Hasbro bought Larami. The Super Soaker became a Hasbro brand alongside Nerf. Cumulative lifetime sales of the Super Soaker line, on the public record, crossed $1 billion. For most of the 1990s, the public story of the Super Soaker simply did not include him, just a Hasbro logo and a kid laughing in a backyard ad, while a black engineer in Atlanta watched royalty statements that did not match what his invention was earning. In 2013, that became an arbitration. Johnson alleged that Hasbro had underpaid royalties on both the Super Soaker and Nerf products that traced back to his patents and engineering. The dispute did not go to a jury. It went to arbitration, and the arbitrator's award was on the public record. Approximately $72.9 million paid to Lonnie Johnson by Hasbro in 2013. It was reported in Bloomberg. It was reported in Reuters. It was reported in the Atlanta papers. The man who had designed the spacecraft power source for Jupiter and the best-selling toy of the 1990s had to walk in front of an arbitrator to be paid for the toy. The settlement closed the toy chapter. The lab in Atlanta had already started the next one. A water gun reads as a novelty, not as the work of a nuclear engineer who has built hardware for Jupiter. A toy is sold by the company whose logo is on the box, and the inventor disappears into the licensing line at the bottom of the package. And a black inventor from Mobile, Alabama, designing the power for a deep space probe and the engine of a billion-dollar toy line at the same time, did not fit the simple American story of who builds the future. The simple story chose the brand. The patents and the settlement did not. The National Inventors Hall of Fame inducted Lonnie Johnson in 2022. Johnson did not stop. He runs Johnson Research and Development in Atlanta, a small lab full of patents most people have never heard of. He is developing a solid-state energy converter he calls J-Tech, a heat engine with no moving parts that could, if it works at scale, change how we convert heat into electricity. He is developing advanced batteries. The man who powered your water gun is chasing the engines that could power something much bigger. He has done it before. Twice. On the same workbench. There's a name on the patent. There's another name on the work. Subscribe. We'll find the second one. Erased minds. Case files on the people history forgot to thank. New shorts every Tuesday and Saturday. A full story every Wednesday and Friday.